Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. Here to present AB 674. AB 674 is a bill that promotes the investment of private capital into clean on-site distributed generation technologies by removing a cost barrier to that investment. Under current law, utilities are required to assess non-bypassable charges on customers who choose to generate a portion of their power on-site rather than purchase it from the grid. These charges constitute a massive additional cost on distributed generation in the range of 75 to 100% of the upfront cost over the lifetime of a project. Removing these charges will result in the deployment of more on-site energy without the need for ratepayer investment into new power plants and transmission and distribution. It's important to me that we get the language in the bill right to ensure that we're promoting clean technology. I plan to accept the proposed committee amendments, but ask the chair's permission, if I may, to discuss the details of them very briefly. For the members of the committee, on page 4, proposed committee amendments. On the first amendment proposed on page 4, we will accept that amendment and respectfully request that the chair and his staff convene a meeting with the PUC, the CEC, and ARB staff and your offices to discuss the proper emission standard and methodology to achieve GHG reductions. On the second amendment, we too will accept that amendment. We simply request that the following language be added to the amendment: that requests for relevant data shall occur no more than once per year. With those clarifications, Mr. Chair, I do have just one more amendment to mention. As I previously committed to in the Utilities and Commerce Committee, I have provided amendments to the committee which state that any amount of exempted charges shall be fully recovered from customers in the same customer class as the customer generator, and no amount may be shifted to any other customer class. This language was agreed to in order to remove labor opposition. Mr. Chair, it is my understanding that this language will be amended into the bill when it moves from this committee. And, yes, sir.
Just to proceed with your witnesses, and that it's our understanding as well.
Thank you, sir. Finally, it's important for members to know that this bill does not set a precedent for exemptions or exceptions from these charges. On several occasions, including when the legislature first enacted these changes, these charges in 2001, this body has determined that there would be a greater overall benefit to the state to remove this cost barrier in order to deploy technologies that would otherwise be encumbered. You'll hear from the supporters of the bill about the multitude of benefits that we can realize if this measure is supported: more private sector capital deployment in distributed generation, job creation in the state, and reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and I turn to my witnesses in support of 674.
The committee's rules are 2 witnesses for 2 minutes, so if there's 4 of you, that's a minute each.
I'll be quick. Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Andrea DeVoe. I am here on behalf of TechNet, which represents both innovative technology companies and their customers. The bill is consistent with the thoughtful, progressive energy policies California has pursued for decades. By ensuring that new innovative technologies can participate in the market, we will all benefit from reduced emissions. The technologies addressed by this bill have to reduce GHGs and have to meet strict Air Resource Board and Air Quality Management District air standards. Commercial and industrial customers are willing to invest their own capital to install clean on-site generation technologies. They should not be unfairly assessed utility fees on non-utility generation. They are helping to improve the reliability of the grid, reduce emissions, and smog-forming pollutants. They are doing your part. We respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chair and members, Bruce Mignani on behalf of California Large Energy Consumers, otherwise known as CLECA. AB 674 removes impediments that allow for capital deployment, and the importance here is it not only allows companies to control some of their energy costs, but I think more importantly it allows them to control their emissions. It allows them to look long term on how they comply with AB 32, and in doing so it not only creates jobs, it protects jobs in traditional manufacturing in California, all while protecting the environment. For those reasons, we ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Adam Simpson, and I'm a co-founder of Adagen, a fast-growing startup located in Menlo Park. I'm pleased to support AB 674 and thank Assemblymember Mullen for his efforts on this issue. We're developing a new high-efficiency advanced technology for distributed generation applications. We actually recently won a CEC grant to deploy our technology next year. And so clean on-site generation reduces demand on the grid in the same way as energy efficiency and demand response. Currently, when demand on the grid is reduced, the grid responds by turning off the most expensive and dirtiest resources, which in California is always natural gas. Renewables, large hydro, and nuclear plants do not respond to reductions in demand. It is only the natural gas plants that turn off, most of which are old and inefficient. This means when clean DG is installed, all Californians win, and this is by reducing the dependence on inefficient, dirty natural gas plants, and in return getting cleaner air and cheaper electricity. For these reasons, we respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Shaw of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, and we're in a supportive amended position. Primarily for the reasons that many companies have installed combined heat and power systems and other energy efficient systems designed to capture waste heat and convert that into electricity. As the bill is written today, which we do support, moving forward with permitting clean distributed generation to be exempt from these charges, we would like to continue to work with the author's office and have had many discussions with them regarding the addition of existing clean distributed generation facilities, for the reason that these folks have already made investments in technology. They're already reducing GHG emissions. They're already improving energy efficiency, and to purely incentivize new installations, we believe would unfairly advantage those over the companies that have made the investments early when there wasn't any recompense. There is some evidence we've heard from a few of our members that they may look to exit their own, decommission their own combined heat and power systems. If they're not provided some type of financial compensation or relief from the non-bypassable charges, specifically the departing load charge. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Bill Krause, representing Solar Turbines, subsidiary of Caterpillar, in support of the bill. Thank you.
Sylvia Solis, on behalf of Advanced Energy Economy, in support.
Julie Malinowski-Ball on behalf of Capstone Turbine Corporation and its 200 employees in San Fernando Valley, we support.
Jason Eichert with Edelstein, Gilbert, Robeson, and Smith on behalf of Qualcomm, also in support of the bill. Thank you.
Angela Pontus on behalf of the Center for Sustainable Energy, in support. Danielle Lynch on behalf of Audubon, California, in support.
Reed Addis on behalf of Bloom Energy, in support.
Witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Friedman on behalf of the Utility Reform Network. We're here in opposition to the bill. The new innovative technologies that are being discussed by the proponents of this bill are exclusively or primarily, we believe, gas-fired technologies. They're turbines and combustion engines. They may or may not represent any form of innovation over what's out there in widespread adoption today, and we're not clear that anything in this bill would require any particular form of innovation in the coming years. Right now, the Public Utilities Commission is looking at revising the net energy metering tariff pursuant to AB 327, which applies for behind-the-meter solar facilities. This bill would allow non-renewable facilities of much larger scale to receive many of the benefits currently afforded to solar projects under net metering. But the net metering tariff, as it changes, may actually become less favorable than the treatment that would be offered under this bill. We're not quite sure why that would make any sense. In addition, the greenhouse gas emissions benchmarks that are being discussed, the committee amendments and the statement from the author, we're not sure where that actually has ended up. But to the extent that utilities are having their demand for prospective resources reduced, the committee should keep in mind that the utilities are increasingly filling their incremental procurement with zero greenhouse gas resources. For example, if the chair's bill were to pass and the renewable portfolio standard were to be 50%, we'd be looking at a future in which utilities would be getting at least 50% of their resources, incremental resources, from zero carbon generation. So to simply benchmark the cleanliness of behind-the-meter gas-fired generation based on some average emission statistics or gas-fired units on the margin, to us doesn't seem like a very realistic way to approach the concept of ensuring that incremental generation cleans up the grid. And finally, cost-shifting concerns. We're happy to hear the author is going to take some language that would ensure that the exemptions provided by this bill do not raise rates for residential customers, but the devil is always in the details, and we haven't seen the language, and we'd be interested in looking at that if the bill moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I did want to just mention that the amendments, just so that everybody knows, the amendments require a different standard than SCHIP, because we agree, for the reasons just articulated, that SCHIP standards were insufficient to ensure that this would be cleaner than what would otherwise take place. So the standard that we used was that to qualify, the technology would have to be cleaner than the existing grid for that IOU territory. So arguably, in a PG&E territory, this standard would have to be even higher than in some of the other areas. It has to be better than what the existing grid would be, and it floats as the grid improves. So I do think it's a better one, but definitely for the reasons articulated was why the standard needed to be changed.
Thank you, Chairman Williams and members. Nick Pappas with Southern California Edison. I want to echo the comments of Tern related to the emission standard. One quick piece on that. We do appreciate the direction the amendments take the bill in with regard to the emission standard. However, if the emissions are benchmarked to the year prior, as the utility grids get cleaner, as the RPS standard continues to be enrolled, that standard, we're talking about making long-term commitments to these gas-fired technologies relative to a grid that will become cleaner over time, such that benchmark may not still apply. Quickly, just on the definition, to speak to what we're talking about here today, we're talking about non-bypassable charges, which really relate to three different items. 2/3 of those non-bypassable charges go to the CARE program, energy efficiency, and EPIC, which is energy research. 1/3 of those charges go to repaying the state for energy crisis era costs, and then 2% go to nuclear decommissioning. So speaking to the purported benefits that the supporters claim, there's really no nexus between any reliability, standby, generation, transmission, and distribution. There's really no nexus between paying for the CARE program and paying for energy efficiency and providing these purported grid benefits. As Tern mentioned, this would shift costs onto other customers. With the amendments, that may not shift costs onto residential customers, but it would shift costs onto other business customers who would be getting potentially cleaner energy from the utility. And finally, we think this sets a very dangerous precedent as we envision a future where distributed generation is prevalent, to the extent that we go down the path of exempting distributed generation customers from paying for the CARE program and energy efficiency. At what point, when everyone has DG, who's going to be left to pay for those programs? So we think AB 674 is inconsistent with a future which has both robust CARE and energy efficiency programs and prevalent distributed generation. With that, I'll ask for your no vote. Thank you.
For the witness, just state your name, organization, and your opposition.
Davina Flemings on behalf of Pacific Gas and Electric Company. I would like to echo the comments of my colleagues from Tern and Southern California Edison. We do believe this bill will result in a cost shift to non-participating customers, and we also believe that these technologies will not necessarily provide grid benefits as the grid becomes cleaner. Thank you. We urge your no vote.
Heidi Barsili on behalf of San Diego Gas and Electric. For the reasons already stated, we remain opposed to the bill.
Rebecca Lee on behalf of the Office of Ratepayer Advocates. Apologies for not submitting our letter in time to the committee, but we did oppose the position in the previous policy committee. And as with regards to the amendments, we'll be looking at those amendments closely to assess our position. Thank you.
Matt Kloppenstein on behalf of Pacificor. We don't have an opposed position, but we have concerns with the bill and are seeking amendments basically to protect small utilities. We have an 87 megawatt per year load, so one project would have a very disproportionate effect on our service territory. So thank you.
Any other witnesses to the committee? There is a motion by Dolly, second by Hadley, and this was a tough one, but I appreciate the author saying I'm serious about wanting to make this a improvement on emissions. We did prepare amendments that were, I know, tough to take because not all of the people in sport can yet meet those tough standards, but we hope it will incentivize the cleaning up of those technologies, the further cleaning up of those technologies, and while I do think that there are the cost issues, if those do outperform the technology significantly, they may be worth it for a number of reasons. So the chair's recommendation is aye with amendments. Appreciate the motion and second. Did you have comments? Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from my standpoint, there's a good element and a bad element to this. The good element is we are encouraging innovation. We're encouraging distributed generation, which will add resiliency to the grid over time. And as amended, the bill has the potential to improve the efficiency and the environmental efficiency of our electricity generation. But I am very concerned about the rate shifting risk. I respect you restricting that rate shifting to within specified class of customers, but it is still rate shifting. And I don't, at this very dynamic stage in the evolution of our grid, I don't want to stop innovation like this, but I do think the regulatory and the rate shifting risk is real. And would the author consider a cap on this program in terms of megawattage or some other measure limiting the scope of this program until we get to see some of the effects?
Thank you for the comments, Assemblyman. We have discussed the prospect of a cap. I am not outwardly opposed to that, but I do want to convene a conversation going forward with regard to the GHG emissions piece and figure out what kind of a cap fits with the overall policy goals of the bill. So I can't commit to that today, but that is most certainly going to be part of a conversation.
If that's part of the conversation and that's something that the author is prepared to consider and work proactively for, I'm prepared to support the bill.
Thank
you. With that, would you like to close?
Respectfully ask for the aye vote. Just want to thank Mr. Chair and staff for your work on the bill. Again, just reiterating, this will remove a barrier to private investment in distributed generation technologies here in the state. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Please call the roll.
Assemblymember Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. Dolly?
Aye.
Dolly, aye. Garcia? Aye. Garcia, aye. Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper?
No.
Harper, no. McCarty?
Aye.
McCarty, aye. Randon? Stone? Stone, aye. Wood? Wood, aye. That's 7 ayes.
7 ayes, your bill is out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have Sebastian Ridley Thomas and then Mr. Wilk on deck.
Mr. Chair, members, it's good to see you again. You look better later in the evening. It's in the members' lounge. I'm here to present AB 1030, and we'd like to accept committee amendments that remove provisions related to PLAs and make it clear that the bill's employment-related priorities are subordinate to the objective of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and that the bill is limited to projects that have a hiring component. AB 1030 would create workforce training and employment opportunities for disadvantaged workers to ensure that they are invested in the green economy. While the Great Recession has ended for many Californians, we know that lingering unemployment remains high for many of our disadvantaged communities. I have a number of witnesses here who may have dwindled down because they actually do have to go and work second and third jobs because we don't have the abundant employment opportunities that we hope to see. For those who are here, with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'd like them to testify to the merits of the proposal.
Good evening. My name is Shioni Flegel. I'm here today representing PolicyLink. We're a national organization based in Oakland focused on advancing economic, social, and environmental equity. We're proud to be working with the member on AB 1030 and see it as a very positive step towards really capturing the full potential of AB 32. California's future, as we look forward, will really be dependent on preparing all Californians to contribute in a proactive way. While it used to be thought that equity was something we should care about because it's nice, we now know that equity is much more than that. There's a growing body of economic research that demonstrates that equity actually leads to better economic outcomes for everyone. It leads to more economic growth over longer periods of time. We just completed research that looked at what would happen if we just addressed the disparity in income earnings for people of color. That action alone, which we know is not easy, would have created a 33% increase in our economy. That translates to roughly $670 billion in our GDP by removing the disparity between people of color and white workers. Unfortunately, our current path is not taking us in this direction. Instead of growing more equitable, California is growing an uneven economy that benefits a few and leaves a growing number of our Californians falling behind. Over the last 20 years, our state has experienced a significant decline in middle-wage jobs with a rapid increase in low-wage jobs. So you may be wondering what this has to do with climate policy. We believe that AB 32 and SB 535 presented us with a unique and valuable opportunity to protect our environment, grow our economy, and advance equity, all critical goals to our state's long-term sustainability and prosperity. While our current regulatory and investment strategies are set to help us bring down our GHG reductions and to promote significant investments into some of our state's most polluted communities, we're not yet doing enough to ensure that these investments actually help create job and workforce opportunities for our folks.
I'm going to need to stop you there. We were only lax with one group of people, and that was a little nice old abuelita. And sorry, you're not old enough to qualify.
That's all right. And I'm glad you let the abuelita go longer. I'll close, and we have, I think, a couple folks here to support. The rest of our colleagues actually had to travel back to the San Joaquin Valley today.
Other witnesses in support?
Good afternoon, Jonathan Malagon with the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color, Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, and Fathers and Families of San Joaquin, in strong support of this bill.
Good evening, Erica Rincon Whitcomb on behalf of Central California Environmental Justice Network, Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, and the California Equity Leaders Network, a coalition of over 60 organizations working across California, in strong support. Thank you.
Witnesses in opposition? Witnesses removing opposition?
Even better.
I like
that.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Julianne Broyles here on behalf of Associated Builders and Contractors of California. With the removal of the project labor agreement provisions from the bill and the community benefit agreements, we were pleased to be able to remove our opposition. Look forward to working with the author as the bill continues forward.
Motion by Harper, second by Wood. Any comments or questions? Chair's recommendation is aye. Would you like to close?
Respectfully requesting I vote. Thank you for your consideration and hard work, Mr. Chairman, on this proposal.
Thank you, and thank you to PolicyLink. Please call the roll.
Assemblymember Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. Dolly? Garcia? Hadley? Aye. Hadley, aye. Harper? Aye. Harper, aye. McCarty? Aye. McCarty, aye. Rendon? Stone? Aye. Stone, aye. Wood? Aye. Wood, aye. It's got 6 ayes.
You have 6 votes. Your bill is out.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilk, and on deck, Mr. Frazier.
I'm going to sit in the Mr. Ridley Thomas Lucky chair. See if the streak continues. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Today I present to you AB 1398. AB 1398 will streamline the CEQA process and provide certainty for project proponents by prohibiting litigation over aspects of a project that meet all existing state, local, and federal environmental standards. Essentially, AB 1398 will serve as a litigation guide to some of the major issues within CEQA. The intention of CEQA, when Governor Ronald Reagan signed the measure over 40 years ago, was for developers to factor in environmental protection when building a project. At that time, there were few environmental laws. CEQA back then was envisioned as a tool. Now it's used as a weapon. CEQA is used by corporations against other corporations, labor against business, environmentalists against development, and NIMBYs not wanting anything in their backyard. It's time we modernize CEQA to conform to California's comprehensive environmental laws and regulations. Again, AB's 1398 will preserve the law's original intent, environmental protection, while preventing special interest CEQA abuses that jeopardize community renewal, job creation, and the environment. California needs to make significant strides for well-deserving projects to move quickly through the historically arduous process of mitigating CEQA lawsuits. This means more jobs without sacrificing the integrity of our environment. AB 1398 would change state law so that generally, if a proposed project meets the requirements of other environmental laws like the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Air Act, or local emission restrictions, then that would constitute CEQA compliance in those areas. It's time we as the legislature pass real CEQA reform, not specific exemptions for rich, politically well-connected people who profit from building an NFL stadium or an NBA arena. I want to see this extended to all projects and not just for a select chosen few. CEQA abuse is real and stands in the way of important infrastructure projects, hampers efforts to create more affordable housing, improve amenities in urban areas, and undermines California economic success without any additional environmental protections. This bill is an important step forward, ensuring we continue to protect our environment while also meeting California's critical infrastructure, affordable housing, and economic development needs. I respectfully ask for an aye vote. I did at one time, Mr. Chair, have proponents here to testify, but I see that they're no longer here. So,
witnesses in support.
You've got one here, Anthony Sampson, California Chamber of Commerce, in support.
Well, thank you so much.
Witnesses in opposition.
Good evening, Kyle Jones, Sierra Club, California. Chair, members of the committee, we are in opposition of this bill. CEQA is intended for the public to be able to understand the environmental impacts of a project and for those impacts to be fully mitigated. We think that this bill goes too far. It goes far in that it guts the process in a way that harms the public and the environment, and we respectfully urge your no vote.
Jenna Price on behalf of the California League of Conservation Voters. We echo the comments of our colleagues in opposition. Thank you.
Comments from the committee? Mr. Dolly.
I'd like to thank the author for bringing this bill forward. We've seen quite a few CEQA bills today, and I agree with you that CEQA actually was a decent, good law when it was passed, and it's been used in most cases to, I'll give you an example. When I sat on the Board of Supervisors, one company had a gravel pit, the other company sued the other company because they didn't want competition, and we've seen it in environmental movement, we've seen it with business, we've seen it so many different ways, and if the law was actually used for what it was intended to use, we wouldn't be having these conversations. So I appreciate you bringing the bill forward, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. The chair's recommendation is no. We have seen other bills like this before. This would be sweeping and is more appropriate for a larger stakeholder discussion, and only if it was balanced by other measures. I am a YIMBY, but there is a yes in my backyard as opposed to a no in my backyard. But this goes too far, so the chair's recommendation is no. There's a motion and second, which would be due pass to appropriations. Please call the roll.
I don't get to close.
Oh, yeah. In this committee, nobody closes, but you can.
Anyway, I really appreciate your attention. I'd actually like to have additional discussions moving forward on this. I'm not going to do it because you guys have been here all day and you've been attentive, and I appreciate that. But I can go just in my own community, example after example of CEQA abuse, and we obviously need to do something to address it because I think it affects every community. And moving forward, I think it has a bigger negative impact on urban areas as we seek to try to do urban infill to lift those communities up. And moving forward on the speaker's agenda on affordable housing, I think there's a lot of NIMBYism when it comes to affordable housing. So we can't do affordable housing. That's one step. This is the second punch in order to be successful. So I hope whatever it is, we do move forward at some point with real CEQA reform. Thank you.
And I do agree with you. That's why we have a affordable housing and an infill exemption under CEQA and Senate Bill 375. And when there is changes asked for, I would want to see projects that did not qualify for those. I think that would make some of us a little more open-minded. With that, please call the roll.
Assemblymember Williams?
No.
Williams, no. Dolly?
Aye.
Dolly, aye. Garcia? No. Garcia, no. Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper?
Aye.
Harper, aye. McCarty?
No.
McCarty, no. Rendon? Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Wood? No. Wood, no. It's got 3 ayes.
You have 3 votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Mr. Frazier, and I'm on deck. That means we're in the home stretch, folks. Thank you for both witnesses and members for holding on.
Move the bill.